Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions, and this is my spoiler-free review of Dune Part 2. I just got back from watching it tonight on IMAX, and the first thing I gotta tell you is that IMAX is definitely the way to see it. I just rewatched Part 1 on IMAX a couple of weeks ago, and it was the first time I'd seen Part 1 on an IMAX screen. I've seen it in the theaters and I'd seen it at home, and the IMAX experience was definitely the best. And the whole movie was filmed for IMAX, so that's really the way to go. So, is it a good movie? It's a great movie. In fact, it's really a fantastic movie. Is it a faithful adaptation? Yes and no. It is a great Dune experience. It's very much of Dune. There are quite a few departures from the book, none of which I'm going to go into in this video. But that said, it is very satisfying conclusion to the story that is told in the novel Dune. The high points are there. A lot of the details are changed. Some, I think, possibly for the better when you're speaking to a general audience that's not necessarily composed of hardcore Dune fanatics like myself, and some that I understand why they made those changes, so I don't really have a big issue with them. And my wife and I saw it together. She hasn't read the book, and she didn't have any issues with none of the stuff she had issues with, and she didn't have that many, but none of them had to do with anything that was changed in this adaptation. The main theme of Part 2 is really Paul's struggle with this vision that he had in Part 1, the one of the crusade or the jihad across the Imperium, where millions, if not billions, of people were going to be killed in his name, in the name of his father, the worshiping at the shrine of his father's skull. That was the main theme of Part 2, and it is a major theme of the second half of the book. So that is a very faithful part of this adaptation, is this struggle that Paul has with trying to avert this prescient vision that he has had, and whether or not he even can, among other things. I mean, his main goal is wanting to avenge the treatment of House Atreides by the Baron and the Emperor, and which is a theme from the book as well, and is definitely central to the story here. So from a story perspective, it adheres to the major arcs of the book. It's a pretty good pace. It's a long movie for sitting in the theater. Can't pause it. And for myself, I managed to fully prepare myself mentally and physically to be able to sit through that whole thing. So over 2 hours, probably a little over 2.5. There were so many trailers in front of the movie that it was like another 20 minutes right there. The effects are fantastic. The action is really good. There's been talk about how it's a war movie. Yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on, and it's all quite interesting. And not really a war movie in the traditional sense, but there's a lot of really great action. And it's really well done. The photography is fantastic. All of the vistas of the desert are just eye-catching, especially on that giant IMAX screen. The performances are great. They do a good job of breaking up the action on Arrakis with what's going on in Kytain, which is where the Emperor is, and we're introduced to the Emperor and his daughter Irulan, and their motivations, and their trying to understand what's really going on Arrakis, which is alluded to in the book, but any of the scenes that take place outside of Arrakis are few and far between in the book. We don't ever see any action on Kitane. There's a lot of really good sequences on Gedi Prime, which is the Harkonnen homeworld. And there's a lot of interesting Harkonnen action on Arrakis with Raban trying to contain the damage being done by the Fremen as they are fighting a guerrilla war against the Harkonnens. So all of that plays out really well. It's really the relationship between Paul and Chani that is another central theme of this movie, and it is a lot more organic than in the book. In the book, we have a little bit of a time jump. Not long after the events of the first movie, we skip ahead a couple of years, and at that point, Paul and Chani's relationship has already gotten to a point. But in this movie, we're seeing all of that courtship and the development of the relationship, and it's really well done. It's really interesting. The Chani character is quite elevated from her role in the book. She has some interesting things she does in the book, but it is a pretty minor role, and it is a much bigger part, much more central to the story of the second movie. And it is interesting. It's well done. It's played out well. The performances of Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya rings true. It feels right. There's a lot of interesting plotting going on with Lady Jessica. Very different how a lot of that unfolds from the book, which I'll get into in a future video where I go into a lot of the details about how it was adapted, what's different, what was good, how it was different, things like that. So yeah, I give it 2 thumbs up. I highly endorse the second movie. I definitely recommend seeing it in IMAX. As I've said, see it in the theaters. I'm going to go back and see it again. I guess I have to go to an AMC theater now so I can get the crazy Shai Hulud bucket, because I can't resist. So I'm definitely going to try to get that probably next weekend as it opens up wider. So I was very privileged to be able to see it a few days early on the IMAX screen. It was well worth it. We had really good seats, though, right in the middle of the theater, so could see the whole screen. The sound was great. Definitely go check that out. As a fan of Dune, this is a very positive experience. It's a good thing for Dune. It's a great experience. It's going to open up the world of Dune, the whole universe of Dune, to a lot more people, which I think is ultimately very positive. And it's got me very excited about the possibilities of the Dune series on HBO later this year. But yeah, this is my first time seeing Dune 2 in the theaters. It will not be my last. I'm going to see it a few times. And then I look forward to getting it for home release so that I can watch it again and again and again, as I've done with part 1. So there you have it. More details and spoilers in my follow-up video, which will be coming out in a day or so. I'll ruminate more on my thoughts on Dune Part 2 and what I think about all of this stuff. Brace yourself. Very different from the book in many ways. Many of the details are changed, but there's no deal breakers, though. I think it all plays really well. It is very theatrical in the way that it's done, and it's ultimately successful. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.